And before we get started, I just want to say thank you to all of our sponsors who, of course, make this possible. It's kind of a long list, so we're grateful for that. Chum, Loaves and Fishes Community, Community Action Duluth, our host here tonight, All Nations Indigenous Center, Citizens Federation, Cross Cultural Alliance of Duluth, Together for Health at Myers-Wilkins, Lifehouse, Vision Duluth, PAVSA, Students for Education Reform, Voices for Racial Justice, Clayton Jackson McGee Memorial, Affordable Housing Coalition, Minnesota Coalition for the Homeless, SWORD Career Solutions, MPERG UMD, Vision Duluth, and NAACP Duluth. Wow, thank you so much. And just like it was before, we want to maintain a very respectful dialogue and conversation throughout this night. It's going to be great. Now, before I got here, I looked up the definition of accountability. And by definition, it's an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to accept responsibility for one's actions. And so we are trying to match up what our candidates in the fall said about what they were going to do now that they're in office. And so that's the goal of tonight. We're going to start off with the first issue is board diversity, and our speaker is Renee Bennett. She's going to speak for a few minutes, and then each of the leaders will speak, and I'll be sitting up here at the front, and I won't come back up here and get in your way, and I'll just point to the person who's supposed to go next. And then Renee will have a closing remark about the issue. So come on up, Renee.
Hello everybody, I'm Renee Bennett. I work here at Community Action as the Employment Liaison for the Bridge to Employment Program. I love it here, so you know that. In some of my work, I do boards and commissions work and help the city with diversity and different issues of that. Well, I fall over this thing. Thank you everybody for coming. It's going to be amazing. I'm excited. And thank you guys for showing up. Appreciate that. I know how hard you work. So I'll just start off with the question. Within the 90 days of assuming office, you will commit to developing policies and procedures to ensure that city staff from all departments as well as members of all public boards and commissions more accurately reflect the community they serve, with a specific goal of increasing the number of people of color in these positions. And some of the stuff that I could talk about, historically speaking, that's never happened for us here. As communities of color, as a community in general, that's never worked for us because it's never happened for us. And right now we believe we're in a time that the city wants it that way. We want it, and we believe that should be that way, and the mayor and the councilors believe that. And I know that because I actually ran with them. Like, I know all of the stuff that they think about and we argue about and talk about all the time. So historically speaking, they know that I would come at them in the real way about it's never worked for us because nobody ever included us, ever. So with that commission work, right now, like the Human Rights Commission has 10 open seats and there's 5 people seated. That's humongous. That's an issue. That needs to be filled. And in the community did some community work on boards and commissions. Chum was a part of that. Take Action was a part of that. Community Action and community members were a part of that. We did some boards and commission training and try to get people involved and draw people in and teach people why it's important. And we gave that information to the city. We're kind of waiting for them to figure out what to do with that. So we're kind of waiting on that. And we think it's a great time to be doing that and to be accessing the population that we were supposed to reflect and serve. And we think, community thinks that the existence of the commissions and boards should reflect the relevant city work, and community and cultural boards of the commissions lack power and budget availability. So those things are pretty key. And we think the city should invest in a better process of how to get minorities to the table and get their voices heard without just being that person that looks in the right way to say the right thing. We really need that reflection to happen. And that's what the community wants. And we, again, believe that we're in the right place for that, and that we believe that we want it done, everybody wants it done, so we're going to ask that specifically. And so today, with all of that, what have you guys done to address any of that.
Mayor, we'll start with you, 1 minute response.
Do you want us to take the mic and pass it down?
I guess they don't really want us to pass it, it might not work as well, so we could just, I'm sorry, stand and.
That's fine. I just want to make sure people can hear.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 minute starting now. Okay. So this year we did more than we have done ever before when it comes to boards, and commissions, and actually I think as it turns out it's still not enough. So Phil and I personally recruited as many people, went to as many organizations, passed out as many applications, made direct asks to people to please join these boards and commissions and apply. We did participate in the training with Take Action and CHUM to bring people along. And so between now and next year, what I'd like to do is revamp the application, make it easier to do the application online, and to to keep building on what we've done. We do have 5 slots open on the Human Rights Commission. We have other slots still open. We will be filling those, and we are still taking applications for those. So we did more than I have ever seen done. Still wasn't enough.
Thank you, Renee, for your service on boards and 2 different boards and commissions. Is that true? And thank you to everyone else here who has applied or is currently serving. I happen to be the Personnel Committee Chair for the City Council, so I feel like I have a special obligation to make sure that we respond, that the City Council and the City Administration respond to the requests that the community is fully represented on every board and commission. What I have done personally was take part in the Take Action Minnesota training, the CHUM training, and be there and show up when I have showed up for follow-up meetings. And it's a process, it is a process. It's a government, folks, and we know that nothing happens overnight, but there's a real commitment that I feel myself, and I sense it in my fellow counselors. One place that where I feel like I'm really seeing success happening is on the Indigenous Commission. I'm not appointed to that, but I'm showing up as often as I can to be there, and my sense is that the Indigenous Commission is feeling revitalized and relevant, and that really excites me.
First want to say that I am completely committed to this as a counselor who is not chair of the Personnel Committee. I find myself more in a reactive mode. The mayor makes the appointments. Councilor Anderson works on that process, and then we get the recommendations and vote them up or down. In the past, there have been situations where I was not satisfied, where I pushed back and pushed for more diverse applicants. I do agree with the mayor and Councilor Anderson that we're making progress, and I would turn to them and say if there's anything I can do, particularly working with the community to generate more applicants. One thing I would like to see is to make sure that we're not just encouraging applicants to the Human Rights Commission, to the Indigenous Commission. I'm the council liaison to the Parks Commission. I would like to see broader representation on the Parks Commission. I'm the council liaison to the Library Board. I'd like to see broader representation to the Library Board. So the offer I'll make is that as a member, as a liaison to those 2 boards, when openings come up, I will make an extra effort to get word out to community organizations to let people know there are openings that people should apply for.
So there are a few things that I just wanted to touch on in my minute, and a minute goes by fast, so I better get going. So right after we new councilors were elected, all of us signed on to a press release and encouraged the community to look into different board and commission opportunities, and we all kind of contributed a quote and basically said all of us really want to see some new leadership, especially from diverse communities, on our public boards and commissions. And so that was one way of signifying that we all participated in. I also personally had conversations with folks from a variety of different demographics in my personal life and made personal asks for folks to please consider putting forward applications for a variety of commissions. I'm working with our Duluth delegation on the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, which I think will give us some good policy ideas and better systems thinking about how we can really effectively not only recruit members to our boards and commissions, but also retain them and make sure that they have the training that they need to be successful and to feel like they're a part of the team in a meaningful way. And I'm working with the Human Rights Commission right now on a proposal that we're looking at, Right to Rest Ordinance, which gives that commission a project that's viewed with legitimacy and sort of increased credibility because of the fact that we're moving it forward together, councilor and commission. And I think that that's one way to elevate the work of the different commissions and to encourage people to be a part of them, because they see that's the sort of project that we can work on together and make meaningful change.
Good evening. So you've kind of heard what we've all done, but worked with Matt Trainer, actually helped a lot to put together a PDF that was a little easier to understand as to what boards and commissions did and some of the mission of those. That was included in that press release. Gary was the point person for that. We were able to get a little press. I know that helped just get the word out, because obviously there's only 9 of us plus the administration to make those asks. So that was primarily what I was able to take part in and encourage people to apply through whatever kind of press we could get. So, thanks.
I don't think I'm going to say anything that hasn't already been said, but similar position is Councilor Cypress, where the administration has done a lot of reaching out and Councilor Anderson has been the point person. But take it a step further, Councilor E. Hansen and I met with building trades and see language and how we could push more for PLAs and more diversity in that. And I think there's more of a conversation that needs to be had and held around that issue and how we diversify that workforce so it's not a bunch of white men in union halls and it looks more like our community. And that's something that we haven't necessarily taken steps yet, but it's starting that conversation, and it was a good conversation, a good first step, and I'm sure we can make progress towards that.
Good, everybody. Thank you for that response. And just in closing, I want to thank you guys for the work and hard work that happened, and the councilors and the mayor putting stuff forward that's never been done or said before. In history, we don't make good relationships with each other just historically. So that's something I'm looking forward to in the great work we're doing, and that you're thinking about always including us. If you don't include us, it won't work for us. So historically speaking, that there is key. And I want to thank you for that, for all the work you're doing. Good.
Great job, everyone, on the first conversation. The next person to speak is Andy Moe, and he's going to discuss Human Rights Ordinance. And then this time we'll start down at the other side with Councilor Hobbs.
Hello and good evening.
Hello.
First, I'd like to congratulate you all for getting elected. In October, I was one of the 3 panelists who spoke at the initial forum where I told my story and ended with a question. My question being, will you commit to amending the Duluth Human Rights Ordinance to include people experiencing homelessness, those that have experienced homelessness, or those perceived as homeless as a protected class? It was a question about a proposed bill known as the Homeless Bill of Rights. It has been a rocky road since the resolution was passed. It got more difficult when we shifted our amending the Human Rights Ordinance to having a separate Homeless Bill of Rights because of the recommendation that it would be repetitive and that a separate Homeless Bill of Rights would be stronger. I was homeless for almost 3 years. It was the darkest day of my life, especially due to the fact that I suffered from mental illness. Well, moving on. With this Homeless Bill of Rights, we are hoping to incorporate 5 key items. They are the right to move freely, rest, sleep, and protect oneself from the elements in public spaces. 2, the right to sleep in a legally parked car. 3, the right to a reasonable expectation of privacy of your property in public space. The right to eat, share, accept, and give food in any public space that it is not prohibited. 5, the right for 24 access to hygiene facilities. Part of my struggle when I first ended up homeless and on the street was finding a place to use the bathroom. I know that sounds, not big, but it was huge. It got exhausting, and this Bill of Rights will make it less draining to function. Let's see. 2 years ago, the City Council passed a resolution to support the Homeless Bill of Rights. This isn't just me expressing the need, but our community as a whole. It was a solution that came out of the Housing for All Summit and had numerous sponsoring organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy, and thanks for speaking on the Garfield complex at our council meeting a couple weeks ago. We've been kind of in limbo with hiring a human rights officer, so I think we've kind of held off on this a little bit, but a conversation I've had with Councilor Russ and our community development department is how not to discriminate against Section 8 vouchers, so landlords can't say because you're paying with government dollars that we're not going to rent to you. So having those conversations and moving that forward I think is really important also on that end, and look forward to moving this along when we hire a human rights officer. So thank you.
Hi. I feel like anyways. All right, well, I just recently learned what the current language really means in that ordinance, and I know that Em's probably going to talk about that and how we can look at actionable policy out of what we already have. But I am also working on an earn, sick, and safe time resolution that we'll be bringing forward here in July, and working on what I would call transportation, or something that looks a lot like complete streets that we're hoping at. I'm hoping to include in what might be a potential streets plan or program, working hard with other city staff and administration on what that could look like. So that's kind of where I've been working in that realm. Thank you.
So several months ago, I brought the proposed language to the city attorney's office for the change in the Human Rights Ordinance, and I was advised by them that the language is sort of duplicative. So I'm not going to get into the legalese because it's not very interesting anyway. What I do want to say is that folks who are proponents for the rights of homeless and housing insecure folks, we've shifted our focus, and there's a group of us that are working on, I mentioned earlier, this sort of right to rest or homeless bill of rights that includes the right to rest amongst other rights. And since council passed a resolution in support of this back in 2014, what we've been talking about doing is reconvening the partners who are in support of that initial resolution, seeing if they're still interested as we move forward with language for an ordinance. And we're going to be initiating conversations as we get this language ready, and our stakeholders together with law enforcement, business, and folks who will be at the center of this are the people themselves who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. So they're going to help guide the ship, and I hope to be a part of that process in that way to help facilitate it as we move it into a council action. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to me. This group has been convening over the past 6 weeks or so, and we invite you to come and be a part of that, and let me know, or Joel, or Andy, or there's a lot of people here who are involved with that. So.
So again, I want to thank Andy for sharing his story. I mentioned last October that this particular issue, the Homeless Bill of Rights, has some real personal meaning to me, and it's long overdue, and we've been waiting a long time. The most recent delay was the thought that we should wait to fill the human rights officer position. That process is almost over. So at this point, I don't see any reason for further delay. I have had conversation with other counselors about this. I've had conversations with the mayor about this, with advocates. And I think the time to put down on paper what the proposed ordinance is now. And it's then time to bring it forward to the council for action. And I haven't been able to make the meetings of the group that Em referred to, but I will do my best to be at the next one. And I've been keeping in touch with what's been going on with this conversation. And so I want to offer to Councilor Westerland that I'm ready, committed. Let's do it. Let's do it now. It's long overdue. It's necessary.
So it's really a wonderful thing to work with these folks on the city council. And it's an even more amazing and wonderful thing to live and work in a city where citizens are involved, because that's how things get done. Mayor Larson does have a full-time job, and she actually gets paid a salary, and that's a good thing. Councilors get paid just a little bit, and we're basically here as volunteers with a little bit of cash to help cover expenses. So I know that all of these councilors work really hard, and we need citizen support on every step, right? Today I was like, I did, a half hour of research on Homeless Bill of Rights. And it would be great if people were emailing us and saying, look at this link. This is important. This is what I want to see. And when you send that stuff to the council, it comes to all of us, it comes to the mayor, and it alerts the media that the citizens care about this. The thing that I want to finish with is I want to say we should be looking at, as when we're looking at a Homeless Bill of Rights, we also want to be looking at housing for all. Housing for all, and housing first. So let's make sure, and I know Councilor Cypress on the Parks Commission, there's been a couple of projects that have been suggested for parks where, because of his intervention, existing homes that are affordable on the rental market were not torn down to make room for a park. And I know that that's work that Councilor Cypress has done already, and I think that kind of work is really valuable, and we should thank him for that.
Thank you, and thank you, Andy, for telling your story. I can be really brief. One of the things that you do when you have a good team is you support each other, you do what you can, you move out of each other's way a bit. The council is working really, really hard on this issue. They're doing good work. I did support the Homeless Bill of Rights in 2014. This looks like something I will continue to support in a variety of ways. And just a brief comment on the Human Rights Officer, because we are talking about the Human Rights Ordinance. I want this position filled too, and we are just about there. So there will be an announcement, and that will be done in the next meeting or two. So I just want to say that. I think it is the time to move forward anyway, and while we have been very thoughtful about a process to hire that person, the needs continue, and the actions need to continue, and the pressure from the public needs to continue so that we can keep going on that. Thank you.
Thank you for the updates. We've already been working on this for 2 years. We don't want you to think that you're alone in this work, because anything for us without us will fail us.
Good job, Andy, and of course our leaders. And then our last issue is for the mayor alone, lucky her. John Williams is coming up to speak about our racial equity coordinator.
Well, my name is John Williams. Mayor, would you follow up?
A little closer.
Would you follow the lead of Minneapolis and committed to finding and fully funding one or more non-white equity coordinators that are committed to serving Duluth? Most of the elected officials that are making the decisions don't really understand the African community in Duluth, Minnesota. Having a person of color in the position of racial equity coordinator will bring a different dynamic to the table because they will understand the struggle. We are happy with the things that you're doing with the Duluth Human Rights Officer, but a racial equity coordinator is needed and different from the Human Rights Officer. One person can adequately do the job of human rights as a human rights officer and equity coordinator. History and the content has shown that putting too much on one person is setting it up for failure. It has come to our attention that there has been there's been new funding found for other projects, and this topic should be priority. So, I'd like to.
Okay, great.
You have 2 minutes, Mayor.
Oh, I get 2 minutes, okay. Thank you, John, very, very much. And Andy, when you finished your comments here, you said a line that I like to say too, which I say it as decisions made about us without us will fail us. And I like that we both are saying the same thing because it means that we are listening to each other, so thank you for that, and it's a good way to start the answer to this question. So I have reframed the Human Rights Officer position. And that's, again, kind of a separate side note. Last week I met with Voices for Racial Justice, and they pushed me on this, and I'm glad they did, because I have put a lot of thought into this since then. The human rights officer will be focused on a variety of things that will impact and have something to do with racial disparity and the experiences of people living in our community. That person is also assigned to work on fair housing, ADA compliance, LGBT, a whole bunch of other things that are about the human experience. Last year I said I would commit to a racial equity coordinator, and I want to recommit to that with you this year, and I want to do that with you. And here's how I envision doing that. We do need to find some funding to do that. Last year what I said is that I would commit to doing it, that I thought we needed to find some outside funding that would have some autonomy and some direction to give and place onto the city. So I stand behind that. I will say that when we talk about modeling after Minneapolis, it's really important to note that it took that mayor 2 budget cycles to get this done. It did not happen the first few months. It was 21 months into her term that she was able to secure this, and there are 2 full-time positions for 400,000 people. So I think it's really important that as we're talking about placing a model that's similar to a different city, we actually find our best own solution, because I don't think that's necessarily a fair comparison, but I think it's a good model and a good place to start. A couple of the other things that we're doing is we are participating in the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. This puts us every month with people across the state, cities across the state that are working on racial equity, working on fairness, working on all sorts of these different issues. So we have connections and relations with people who are in Minneapolis, St. Paul doing this kind of work. So I commit to this position and building a path to get there, but I will say it will take longer than I want and longer than you want if we do it sustainably and we do it for the long haul and we do it thoughtfully. So I think that's it for now. Thank you.
The human rights position has been historically underfunded and devalued by not having real decision-making power. But the racial equity as a bullet point in human rights office, in the human rights officer job is a strong statement, but not valuing the racial equity to the extent that it should be in the city. A racial equity coordinator will allow us to work together to be successful in creating a racial equality, because anything without us it would fail.
Great job, speakers and our leaders. And now we're going to have a few people come up and speak about a couple other issues that everyone is working on. The first is affordable housing, and Ashley Compton is going to speak about that. So there's no, you guys don't have to say anything, you can all kind of relax right now, just take note.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashley Compton. I'm an organizer with Voices for Racial Justice, or at least that's kind of what I'm speaking as at the moment. I wear many hats, and I'm really excited to speak on this because it's an issue I'm really passionate about because it uniquely intersects with many of the hats that I wear. Some other things I do in the community, I work at the Life House with chronically homeless youth, age 18 to 23, got a building out here in Lincoln Park. I also serve on the Affordable Housing Coalition for Duluth and on the Heading Home Governance Board for St. Louis County. So, so the intersection of racial equity, affordable housing, which I'm really glad that we're acknowledging there's a really strong connection there, is kind of what I do. So, So the question that we brought to y'all, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive, I didn't double check, but I'm pretty sure that you all did support and pledged to support it, was will you support the city in identifying and securing fair housing outside of traditionally low-income neighborhoods, such as Central Hillside or Lincoln Park? I'm proud of our community for recognizing this as an issue before HUD and the federal government did, but it's a trend that we're seeing not only locally here, but statewide and federally as well, that it's going to be really important to be intentional about where we're building affordable housing. So Supreme Court made a decision about disparate impact, and HUD made a decision called AFFH, which is Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. Those both happened within the last, I want to say, year or so. Because when it came out, I was like, oh, I gotta read about this. I won't bore you with all the lingo and legalese of it, but ultimately, what these rulings say is, under the rule, agencies that receive and distribute federal housing dollars must act not just to prevent further segregation, but also must work to integrate their communities by identifying and knocking down barriers to fair housing. Specifically, they must show that they are show what they are doing to place affordable housing in areas of big cities and suburbs that have mostly white populations. So HUD said it wants to work with regions to do more to desegregate, and it holds out the threat of cutting a lot of money if we're not doing this. So as someone on the Heading Home Governance Board, this is something we're looking at as maximizing our resources, and we can't do that unless we're looking at where we're building our fair housing. And I'm shaking again. There's room in the HUD rule and in the Supreme Court decision for expanding housing opportunities in historically disinvested neighborhoods as well. I'm gonna get rid of that. So here's what we got from our community when I was doing organizing with Voices, is that we don't just want to build affordable housing in mostly white neighborhoods. So we have this thing called cultural capital, right? Folks of color are not necessarily a problem to be spread out. What does genuine housing actually look like? It means that you should be able to decide to stay in the neighborhood that your family has always lived in, to live in a neighborhood where folks look like you, and maybe where you feel the most supported, without sacrificing 11 years of your life, because that is the disparity, right? If you live on the west side versus living on the east side. That's just the truth of it. So what we came up with in our agenda is committing to genuine neighborhood choice for all citizens by identifying and securing affordable housing outside of low-income neighborhoods, but also working to address disparities in historically disinvested neighborhoods, because they are historically disinvested, and ultimately what that says is that we have to continue to disinvest in them. So it's a really complex issue, and we need to have an and/or approach, because that's what genuine housing choice is going to look like. I should also be able to move out east and take my kids to a school that I want them to be at, right? I should have the option and the opportunity to do that and still have affordable housing, find affordable housing out there. So we'll keep you updated. It's going to be really important moving forward, like I said, so that we can maximize resources within our community. And it's going to be a really important part of the city comprehensive plan going forward. So, yes, you're up. Thanks.
Great job, Ashley. You sure do wear a lot of hats. Oh my goodness. Our next topic is earned safe and sick time, which was already mentioned, I believe, once by Councilor Hanson. But Jenny Van Sickle is going to speak about that.
I'm glad you were short, so I didn't have a big awkward adjust. So I first got involved. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So I first got involved with the Earn Sick and Save Time campaign through a student internship. And when I graduated in May, I think it would have been fairly easy for me to just leave my internship activities behind. But when you start to realize and understand the deprivation and the hardships and the very difficult decisions that families in Duluth are making, it became impossible to turn my back on this campaign or the people that would most benefit from an ordinance like this. So what we know is that 50% of the workforce in Duluth does not have access to this benefit. And when we are looking at who's in that 50%, we're talking about mostly women. Since the fall, we have been very hard at work. We have had a really successful launch, and I want to thank everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces from that came to that launch and is supporting us. We've built a lot of support across organizations through We've reached out to our elected officials. We've been working with a lot of folks in a lot of areas, businesses for sure. You know, since the fall, we, like I said, have reached out to our elected officials, and a reminder that nearly everybody here voiced their support of an ordinance like this in some shape or form. We talked about Minneapolis, and I think Mayor Larson made a good point that it's important for us to make sure that we are creating legislation that makes sense for Duluth and the people that live here. It certainly are very vulnerable families and the children that are here, and to remember how important it is that we are looking out for those that are struggling in a lot of areas of their life. So that's my update. Because this is an accountability session, I, of course, look forward to your updates as well. Thank you.
Great job, Jenny. Our next topic is mental health services. So if Donna Howard would come up here.
No. I had a moment.
I'm not Donna. Donna is busy this evening, and so she asked me if I would give an update on the question.
Who are you?
I'm Doris Maltmus, and I am going to provide an update on the mental health question that was raised in October. And I'll just repeat the issue, the question, which was, within 90 days of assuming office, will you commit to the creation of an emergency task force led by the City of Duluth, and to include those living with mental health issues and mental health care providers and law enforcement in order to identify and address solutions to gaps in mental health care services in our city, with a focus on housing development that emphasizes independent living. So I'm happy to report that since October, there's been kind of two arms working on this. One has been a kind of a citizen group that have been really trying to identify problems and trying to come up with solutions. And the other one is that providers, and by that I mean the hospital administration, people in emergency rooms, psychiatrists, St. Louis County Social Services, the police, mental health court, have all been, had already been kind of coalescing as a really effective, kind of high-level team to address these issues. So we encourage the mayor's office to adopt this because we see it as a highly effective group at this time, with a lot of energy and a lot of desire to see really necessary changes in the system. And so the mayor's office has sent personnel who are representing the mayor's office on that committee, and they've indicated that the mayor's office has indicated that they would support including someone who is living with mental health issues on this task force. So we're really happy about that. There's also a commitment to give reports to the community whenever we ask for updates and information. We still, I think, would like to see someone added to that. Right now, I don't think anybody's names have been forwarded or included on that task force, so we'd still like to see a little movement on that. And of course, we know this isn't a short-term thing, but we know that there are still significant housing issues for people with mental health issues. We deal with them every day, and it's a sad reality. So we'd like to both thank and encourage.
Well, thank you for filling in. My apologies for calling you Donna, but I'm sure you like her, so it's okay. Before we have our last issue come up, we just because we're running a little ahead of schedule, you guys are doing awesome. We are going to give you guys, the elected leaders, a chance to address one or two of these topics that we've had the extra speakers come up to. So then, if you want, you don't have to. And I'll remind you what the topics are again before we get started. But our final extra topic is Complete Streets Resolution. Mariana Blitzos.
Hi everyone, my name is Mariana Glitzos. I am the Duluth campus organizer for the Minnesota Public Interest Research Group and also a member of the Duluth Bicycle Coalition. So back in October, the city councilors were asked the following question: will you commit to finishing the work of the 2010 Duluth Complete Streets Resolution by developing and implementing policy that ensures future city planning and transportation projects are accessible and safe for all residents, and in particular families, the elderly, and people with disabilities? They all responded yes, recognizing the connection between poverty and equitable transportation access. So just to give a little background info on this issue, according to the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey, 13% of Duluth households do not have access to a motor vehicle. So when we invest in public places like our streets, all users need to be considered, especially those who already have limited options for commuting. A complete street policy will ensure that all future street reconstruction is equitable and safe for all people, and it will solicit input from those who both live on and use the streets. The term complete streets means streets that are designed and operated to enable safe access for all users, and that pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, public transportation users of all ages and abilities are able to safely move along and across the street. All users includes people of all income levels, all ages, and all abilities, including but not limited to young children, families, senior citizens, those with limited mobility, vision, and hearing. Over 900 complete street policies have been adopted nationwide. Pedestrian, transit, bicycle, and automobile connectivity are all part of Duluth's goal of having an interconnected transportation system. In 2010, the Duluth City Council adopted a complete street resolution, which stated a task force would be formed, and then from there, they develop a policy and plans for implementation. So back in since the October candidate forum, a complete street policy for Duluth was first drafted by community members, mostly with the Duluth Bike Coalition, that outlines implementation, performance measures, and the necessity of a complete street task force. This policy resembles some of the nation's best examples. So this draft was given to Councilor Alyssa Hansen, who has done a bunch of work behind the scenes moving this forward. And she has taken this now to Councilor Flipovich, Mayor Larson, and city staff, and they're all doing great work to make sure we get a solid transportation policy passed in the future. So yeah, we continue to encourage the city council, mayor, and city staff to develop this policy and ensure that it is more than just a guideline to vaguely follow, but that it will be both measurable and enforced for the safety and equity of all people in Duluth. Yeah, thank you again, Councilor Alyssa Hansen, for taking the lead on this and for all the work you've already done. Thank you.
Great job, Mariana. All right, so I think what we'll do is we'll start in the middle this time. We'll start with Joel, and then we'll go to Em, and then I'll try to figure this out. But could you come up and just say if you're going to address one or two of the topics, and then they'll know for the timers if it's 1 or 2 minutes. And again, the topics were affordable housing, earned safe and sick time, mental health services, and complete streets. So again, Joel, if you want to come up.
I'd like to comment on earned sick and safe leave. Last October, you may notice that I did not say yes to committing to a city sick and safe leave ordinance, because at that time, although I'm totally committed to it at the state and federal level, I didn't feel like I could promise to work on that until I learned more about the impact a local ordinance would have. And people who know me know I never commit to something unless I really can commit to it, but once I do, I do. And I am 100%, 1000% committed to us enacting a sick and safe leave ordinance here in the city of Duluth. The first step in doing that must be for the city council, and this is how it was done in St. Paul, this is how it was done in Spokane, Washington. The city council needs to go on the record in favor of this goal, and then create a study group of stakeholders to bring back recommendations for the details of the ordinance. But I want to stress that we must make sure that the City Council is on the record in favor of the goal of a municipal sick and safe leave ordinance before we create a task force. The worst thing we could do is to create a task force and ask them whether we should do this or not, because that won't get us to the goal. So what I think we need to do as councilors is come together and pass a resolution in which we endorse the goal of a municipal sick and safe leave ordinance, and then create a diverse task force to work on the details so that we can then move quickly to enact such an ordinance. And to me, anything less than that will not get us to the goal.
Well, it's exciting to get the chance to comment on some of the other questions, and I wanted to talk about the transportation issue because I represent Duluth's 3rd district, and we have a lot of projects going on regarding transportation, and so I just wanted to give some updates on those. So I think everybody knows at this point that we will be seeing a new Superior Street. It's a 3-year project. And so some of the work that I've been doing is meeting with business owners and being a part of the public meetings that we're having in preparation for that, to ensure that I'm aware of the different concerns that they have about maintaining their business through that process. We're brainstorming a lot of ways that we might be able to continue to drive tourists and residents down to Superior Street, accessing the restaurants and the shops to ensure that people remain solvent, and that we don't have a brand new Superior Street that reopens full of empty shops. And we recognize that business is a really critical part of our downtown, and we want to make sure that we're coming from a powerful position and a thoughtful position to put people in the best scenario that they can be for what will be a very difficult multi-year process. So that's one thing that I've been doing. In addition, I'm sure that you have noticed that 4th Street has degraded to, I've heard a lot of really interesting metaphors for it. Apocalypse now, but so 4th Street is a long overdue county project. But of course, the city intersects with that project, and it's important that we're all on the same page. And so one reason that the 4th Street reconstruction is of concern to folks in my district is because we do have a lot of people who live in supportive housing or don't have access to cars who are going to see increased traffic down their streets on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, especially as Superior Street has construction going on next year. If there's any sort of continuing projects that need to be done, we're still going to see that traffic kind of move through the hillside. And so I've had constituent meetings with folks who are concerned about the speed of traffic, the density of traffic, the volume of traffic. We're working to get a handle and accurate count on that so we can be prepared to ensure people can safely walk and travel through their neighborhood. And we're also kind of trying to make sure that folks, oh, my time is up? Okay. Construction's really complex. There's a lot of people are worried about a lot of things, but they're excited too. Okay. And then also next year, possibly 2018 though, East 9th Street from 6th Avenue East to the curve sort of by Chester Bowl is also going to be resurfaced. And so we're doing some exciting things. This is not boring construction, it's exciting stuff. So we're gonna do some pilot projects possibly. We're talking about bump outs up on East 9th. Yeah, who doesn't love a bump out? And we're talking about like maybe doing some different things with lines. So maybe trying out a bike lane, maybe trying out a wider sidewalk. And so I'm working with Shauna Mullen from Healthy Duluth and Josh Gorham in Public Health. And we're going to be meeting, we've already met a couple times. We're going to continue to meet with city staff to talk about what's possible. We're also going to talk about what's possible for 6th Avenue East, which has always been a headache for pedestrians. And I just wanted to touch on all of these things because 30% of Central Hillsiders don't have access to a car. So you heard 13% earlier, that's the city of Duluth, but it's 30% in Central Hillside in my district. And so I'm trying to pay really close attention to all these projects and making sure that the folks who really rely on public transportation and walk and bike can do so safely and can do so in a manner which disrupts their life as little as possible while we modernize our infrastructure. So there's a lot going on, and I'm working on it. But I don't do construction, just meetings.
It's nice to be an elected official tonight and not someone who's campaigning, so I just want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity to address people here at Community Action and this community. No one has mentioned the new comprehensive plan yet. Yay! So I want to bring that up here tonight. The comprehensive plan was done, as I understand it, in 2006. It's 10 years later. It's time to look at that plan and update it. And this plan is an opportunity, and it's going to take a year of input from citizens all over the committee, all over the community participating to update the comprehensive plan. In there is going to be included a streets plan. Is this true?
Separate, but yes.
Separate, but in the same time period.
Yep.
So we're really, and so there's a great opportunity for everyone to participate and really make a difference in this. Something that I heard about from the Government Alliance and Racial Equity, which I'm participating in as an elected official, and Councilor Russ is there, Councilor Westerland is there as well. Something that I heard about there was an idea that I'd like to just share here, is that they discovered in, I believe it was Portland, Oregon, that communities of color in their neighborhoods, they had light bulbs out all over the place. Light bulbs were not working or getting replaced in streetlights in communities of color. And it was a little bit of research found out that people in the communities of color didn't realize or didn't know that if they call, the thing to do is to call City Hall. And you're supposed to get a response and get the light bulb fixed. And so it was just, it turned out that it was an equity issue that was not being addressed. What the government of Portland figured out was, if we just make a plan to go out and replace the bulbs and not wait for people, that guess what? Light bulbs in every neighborhood were taken care of. And it actually, they have a 4 or 5 year cycle where they go around and just replace the bulbs, whether they need to be replaced or not. And it turns out that it's more sustainable and it's more equitable and makes for safer and more livable communities. So this is a really simple example of cultural competency, of equity that I'm trying to pay attention to as I do my job to the best of my ability on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to keep showing up, keep working, and keep listening, and keep being a part of this amazing community. So thank you.
All right. I'm going to talk about two things. Not everybody here knows this, but I used to be a statewide health improvement program regional coordinator, which is called SHIP, which if you know Annie Harla, that's what she does now. So I've been working on complete streets types of policies for probably like a decade. And so that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to see where we could go with this. Tomorrow we have our first vision committee meeting as part of the comp plan. I'm really excited to be part of that and learn how best we can create that transportation type policy for our community so it does work for us. The other thing you heard me talk about is Councilor Filipovich and I, since before being elected, started working on the earn sick and safe time concept and what that policy could look like in the city of Duluth. We've been meeting with the Greater Downtown Council, with the chamber, with the executive committee task force that's working on that, and bringing together a resolution that we feel works for the community so that we're having that conversation with the community as we move forward through those phases to build something that will really work for Duluth. So that is where I am working right now. Those are long policies. Some of them are about 6 pages. So give us the time, and I'm glad to see the people that are here that have been working on it with us so far. So thank you for your help.
Okay, thank you. I'll cover a few things. I feel like I've touched on a lot of these things this year. Housing, earn sick and safe time. Every single qualified employee does now with the City of Duluth have earned sick and safe time. And I've been a long time supporter of Complete Streets, so I'm happy that that's happening. I want to let you know some of the things I've been doing this year that don't always make this list but are important. I've spent an enormous amount of time hiring people, and we did that in a very different way of bringing people into the process, especially when it relates to your public safety and our public safety, of bringing the community into an open process that had never been done before. A legislative session that hasn't really yielded much, quite frankly. And spent quite a bit of time working with the Fond du Lac Band to find a resolution so that our communities can move forward and that we can move forward together. And in addition, working really hard on stabilizing the city using new values. So I am trying to infuse with my directors, with our staff, core questions when we make any funding decision, when we make any kind of policy making decision. We are asking questions like, who did you engage when you made this decision and how did you engage them? What are the potential negative consequences of this decision? And the biggest one for me, which is, how does this decision, this investment, how does this make things more fair and more just for people living in our neighborhoods? These are very challenging questions to bring to an organization that hasn't always been asked them. And so I need your help in furthering what we're doing and getting further on this list today. We are launching the comp plan. We talked about that. The comprehensive plan, it touches every part of your life. It determines where we build parks. Do we build parks? Do we keep things green? Where do retail spaces go? How do we do transportation? It affects everything that you do. You don't even know it. And we only update it every 10 to 20 years. It's based on 12 policies, but this year I added 2. The 2 new policies are fairness. How does every decision we make ensure that every person in every neighborhood has those same opportunities? So fairness is about citywide. And the other is health, because it is not acceptable that we have neighborhoods where people have health disparities of 11 years living in Lincoln Park than if you have friends living in Gary or Congdon. Those are just unacceptable numbers. And it is our job as a city to take ownership of some of it. So we will be launching this comprehensive plan, and I want you to know we're doing that differently too. We are going to have meetings, and we'll be inviting people. But I'm also going to be riding the city bus, talking to people on the bus. I'm going to be walking in parks, just talking to people who are playing with their kids. We're doing things different so we can get different outcomes. And I want you to know that. So I need you to keep talking with us, and we'll keep listening and talking with you. And this has been really nice, and thanks for having us tonight.
On the transportation side, I'm sure a lot of you are aware that we don't have an ordinance in our taxi cabs in the city of Duluth. Have to be ADA accessible at all. That's not anything that is in an ordinance, and so I'd like to work with them to have a percentage of their fleet be ADA accessible. I think that doesn't fix all the problems. It certainly fills a niche. And also with affordable housing, if we can have more housing choice vouchers for Section 8 as opposed to being forced to go to a high rise just because you don't have the means, you should be able to choose your home. And that also means then updating our rental license process to be similar to that of Section 8. So bringing those more in line, and then also when I was speaking earlier about not being able to discriminate against income, that would be the other part of that, so that there's more choices for people to live wherever they want in Duluth. That could certainly be in the neighborhood they live now, but 2 blocks away, or they can choose to live in Lakeside if they so choose, or anywhere else. So that's what I've been working on in regards to that.
Well, I, for one, just want to say I'm very personally impressed by all of the answers and the speakers and the issues that you guys bring up. It's been really nice to hear everything, and I know you guys have been working very hard. So how about one more round of applause for these? Thank again, Chum, for putting this together, all the great sponsors, the people who brought the cookies. And before we go, when you checked in, you were given an agenda and there was a little post-it note on there. If you would like to be part of some of these solutions that these folks are talking about, and they asked for a lot of help, and I know you guys are the ones who are doers in our community, so if you'd like to help with some of these solutions, you just put your name and contact information on that post-it, and then you put it on the back of, in the back of the room there's some pieces of paper, and so that would be great if you could do that. Again, this is a community event. You guys are the community who's going to make things better with our leaders, and thanks so much for coming.